The CEO laughed when I asked for a raise, said I was replaceable, and told me to stay in my lane, so I did. I killed every script on my last day, left a locked folder called Too Late, and let their systems crash while I ignored all 17 calls. When my phone buzzed for the 17th time, I just stared at it. Same caller ID, Hartwell Industries HQ. I let it ring out again. My coffee was getting cold, and honestly, that was the only thing I cared about right then. 3 days earlier, I'd walked out of that glass and steel building for the last time, box in my arms, fake smile on my face. I'd given them everything, my time, my ideas, my code, and in return, I got humiliated in front of the entire management team. Be lucky you even have a job, the CEO, Mark Hartwell, had said when I asked for a raise. You're replaceable, Jake. Don't confuse automation with importance. Then he actually laughed. A full belly laugh that echoed in the glass conference room while the others tried to hide their smirks. That moment burned into me. The way my coworkers avoided eye contact. The way Mark tossed my performance report back across the table like it was nothing. But he was wrong. I wasn't replaceable. He just didn't know how much I'd built. Every single automated process that had doubled their revenue in under a year. The reporting system, the vendor scheduler, the predictive inventory module, they were all mine. Every script tied to my framework. Every alert routed through my architecture. So when I typed my resignation letter that night, I didn't just quit. I planned my exit like a silent strike. I spent 2 days cleaning my system access, encrypting the automation folder, and leaving a little surprise. Nothing destructive, nothing illegal, just poetic. A folder on the main server titled Too Late. Inside it, a README file with one line, "You should have treated your people better." And behind that, all the documentation, all the instructions they'd need to fix the mess, locked behind a password only I knew. The morning I walked out, I smiled at the receptionist, nodded at Mark when he passed by pretending I didn't exist, and left my badge on HR's desk. Now, 3 days later, their systems were on fire. Shipments missed, clients furious, dashboards blank. The automation that kept their entire operation running had gone dark. And I was sitting on my porch, coffee in hand, watching the sun come up over downtown Columbus, Ohio, when my phone buzzed for the 18th time. This time I picked it up. Not to answer, just to read the voicemail that came right after. Mark's voice, panicked, cracking. "Jake, please, we need your help. Everything's down, just call me back. We can work something out." I hit delete without listening to the rest, because I already knew what my answer was going to be. But before I could even enjoy that moment, something else happened, something I didn't expect at all. An email popped into my personal inbox, from someone inside the company. Subject line: "You need to know what they're saying about you." And what I read next made my stomach drop. Before all of this blew up, I was the quiet guy in IT no one really noticed. I'd been at Hartwell Industries for almost 5 years, starting out as a junior systems analyst. When I joined, their internal operations were a disaster: manual data entry, endless spreadsheets, and late-night calls to fix avoidable mistakes. I wasn't hired to automate anything. I did that on my own time. At first, it was just small things, scripts that cleaned up sales data, automated weekly reports, saved the analysts hours of work. My manager didn't care what I did as long as it didn't cause problems. When he saw my results, though, suddenly those little scripts became official projects. Within a year, I'd built an entire automation suite from scratch. Tasks that used to take teams hours were done in seconds. Costs went down, accuracy went up, and revenue spiked. For the first time in years, the company was thriving. I thought that meant I was safe, valued, maybe even respected. But then came Mark Hartwell, the new CEO. He was one of those visionary types who liked buzzwords more than people. He'd walk through the office talking about synergy and disruption, while we were the ones actually keeping things running. At first, he praised my work, even mentioned me in meetings, said I was the kind of initiative this company needs. But when I asked about a raise, just a modest one to reflect the increased workload, his tone flipped instantly. "You're not management material," he said flatly. "You're a tech guy. You stay in your lane." It stung, but I let it go. Then one day, I found out that Mark had just approved a $60,000 bonus for a guy from sales who hadn't closed a single deal in months, just because they golfed together on weekends. Meanwhile, I hadn't had a raise in 3 years. Still, I kept my head down. Until one Friday afternoon, Mark called a performance review meeting and told me to present how my systems worked to the board. I spent a week preparing, detailed slides, live demos, everything. But during that meeting, something felt off. The board members weren't asking me questions, they were directing everything to Mark. And he was answering them like he built it. He kept saying things like, "When I designed the automation model," or "I developed this predictive logic." I just sat there frozen while my own code flashed across the screen, my name stripped from every file. By the end, he was standing at the front of the room, basking in their praise. That was the first time I realized how dangerous his arrogance really was. The following week, I overheard a conversation in the break room between HR and a senior exec. "Mark's planning to cut some of the IT staff next quarter," one of them said. "He thinks we're too top-heavy. Jake's probably gone once his knowledge is transferred." That's when I knew I wasn't just replaceable to them. I was already replaced. So when I got that email 3 days after I quit, the one that said, "You need to know what they're saying about you," I opened it, half expecting gossip. But what I found wasn't gossip. It was proof that Mark hadn't just stolen my work. He was using it and lying about how it broke. The email came from Rachel, one of the few people I actually trusted there. She worked in operations and had seen how much my systems did for the company. Her message was short but brutal. "Jake, you didn't hear this from me, but Mark told the board you sabotaged the systems out of revenge. He's blaming you for the crash, said he might pursue legal action. You need to protect yourself." My stomach dropped. I sat there rereading the message until the words started to blur. Sabotage, legal action. All I'd done was remove my own credentials and leave them with documentation. Locked, sure, but still there. I hadn't touched a single byte after my resignation. The crash happened because none of them knew how to maintain what I built. But in corporate speak, facts didn't matter. Narratives did. I replied instantly, asking for proof. Rachel hesitated but sent me a screenshot from an internal group chat. There it was, clear as day. Mark telling the executive channel that I'd maliciously disabled core automation services before quitting. He even used the word extortion. I couldn't believe it. The same man who'd mocked me for asking for fair pay was now painting me as some kind of criminal. And because he was the CEO, everyone believed him. That explained the desperate voicemails, the fake apologies. He didn't need my help to fix things, he needed a scapegoat. By Monday, I started getting LinkedIn messages from ex-coworkers. "Dude, did you really nuke the servers? They said you blackmailed Mark. HR told us not to contact you." It was surreal. My professional reputation, something I'd spent years building, was evaporating overnight. So I did what I do best. I started digging. I still had access to some of the public-facing systems I'd integrated with external vendors. Through those, I found traces of log data. Their production environment was still trying to ping my old API endpoints, the ones they'd never documented because Mark told me not to bother. And there it was in black and white, 3 separate attempts from their IT team to rebuild my automation scripts. The timestamps lined up exactly with when the company's servers had gone down. They broke it themselves trying to reverse engineer my work. I collected everything, screenshots, logs, timestamps, and saved it all in a secure folder. But I wasn't done yet. The more I looked into their new system structure, the more inconsistencies I found. Someone had deleted my admin activity logs, overwritten old backups, and renamed entire directories to make it look like my code caused the crash. It was a full-blown cover-up. I was shaking when I realized what that meant. Mark wasn't just trying to ruin me professionally, he was setting me up legally. Then another email came in from Rachel. It just said, "He's meeting with the board tomorrow. He's presenting evidence against you." I didn't know what that meant until she added one more line. "He's using your personal GitHub commits as proof." That's when I realized something chilling. He had somehow gotten into my private repository. But I never gave anyone that access. So who did? I barely slept that night. My mind was spinning. How could Mark have gotten into my private GitHub? I'd used two-factor authentication, a unique password, even security keys. Unless someone inside helped him, it was impossible. By morning, I was running on caffeine and paranoia. I logged in to check my GitHub audit history. The second I opened the access log, my chest tightened. There it was. A login from Columbus, Ohio, timestamped 2 days after I left the company. Accessed through a device registered to Emilia, my coworker, my friend, the person I'd trusted most at Hartwell. We'd started around the same time. We'd eaten lunch together almost every day for years. She was the one who convinced me to stay during the rough patches, said management, just didn't get it. I'd even helped her prep for her senior engineer certification. And now she'd logged into my private repo after I left. I felt sick. I called her, straight to voicemail, texted her, "Hey, need to talk, urgent." No reply. By noon, Rachel texted me again, "You're not gonna like this. They're calling her the lead developer of your automation system now." That line hit harder than anything Mark had ever said. Emilia, the person I'd walked through every line of code with, was now taking credit for it. I went digging again. Found her LinkedIn page, freshly updated. Lead Systems Architect, Hartwell Industries. Same day I resigned. And the worst part, in the description under her role she'd written, "Designed and implemented company-wide automation protocols to double operational efficiency." My words, my metrics, copy-pasted. It was like someone had hollowed out everything I'd built and handed it to her. I sat at my desk staring at the screen for hours, trying to piece it together. Emilia had access to my work laptop the day I quit. She'd offered to finish cleaning it up for it. I hadn't thought anything of it. Now I realized she'd probably copied my local repos and encryption keys before I turned it in. She hadn't just stolen my work, she'd sold it to Mark. That's how he got into my private GitHub. That's how he had evidence. Suddenly everything made sense. The way she'd gone quiet the week before I resigned. The sudden meetings she couldn't talk about. The look she gave me on my last day, half guilt, half pity. It was all there, but I'd been too naive to see it. I felt this cold, hollow rage build up in my chest. I wasn't even angry at Mark anymore. He was predictable. Emilia, though, she was the real betrayal. She knew how much my work meant to me, how much time I'd put into it. She'd stood beside me through the humiliation, pretended to be on my side, all while helping him gut me from the inside. I thought about deleting everything I had on them, burning it all down just to spite them. But then I stopped myself. They wanted me to act out of anger. That's what would make their story believable. Instead, I decided to play it calm, careful, controlled, because if they thought I was finished, they were wrong. I wasn't done, not even close. I spent the next 48 hours doing what I did best, thinking like an engineer. Not panicking, not raging, just planning. They'd built a story. I was the bitter ex-employee who sabotaged the company after being denied a raise. Mark was the visionary leader trying to clean up my damage, and Emilia was the brilliant developer who saved them. It was neat, simple, believable, and completely false. I didn't have the money or power to fight them head-on. Lawyers cost thousands and I was unemployed. But data, I had plenty of that. Logs, timestamps, repo histories, Slack archives, digital fingerprints that told the real story. I started with my GitHub account. I exported every commit history and metadata trail that showed my original authorship, down to the minute each function was written. Every piece of code Emilia copied was signed with my digital key. That alone could shred their lies in front of any board or investor. Then I dug deeper. Remember that automation system I built? Even though they'd broken it trying to fix things, parts of my architecture still pinged external APIs, meaning I could see their broken calls from the outside. Each failed connection logged a trace, timestamps, server IDs, and request sources. And guess what? Those same timestamps matched exactly when their operations crashed, meaning I had irrefutable proof they broke it themselves. Still, I didn't want revenge that could get me arrested or sued. I wanted revenge that was clean, surgical, and permanent, so I designed a plan. Step 1. I created a public GitHub repository, open source, visible to anyone, with a stripped-down version of my automation framework. No confidential data, just my logic and time-stamped commit history. I added a short intro. Developed by Jake Turner, Columbus, OH. Proprietary system later implemented by Hartwell Industries, unauthorized derivative. All code predates their internal release. It wasn't defamatory, it was factual. Step 2. I wrote a detailed blog post on Medium explaining how I'd built an automation suite that doubled a mid-sized manufacturer's revenue. I didn't name the company. I didn't need to. I just included technical insights, screenshots of my commits, and references to corporate misuse. Tech Twitter ate it up. Within hours, it started trending in small circles. Developers, startup founders, and automation specialists were reposting it, praising the transparency. Step 3. I contacted a friend who worked for a local business journal, the kind that loves David versus Goliath tech stories. I told him I had documents showing how a major Columbus manufacturer falsely accused a developer of sabotage to cover their own incompetence. He didn't hesitate. Send it over. And finally, step 4. I scheduled one email to go out at exactly 8 a.m. the next morning. It would forward my entire documentation folder, proof of authorship, GitHub logs, and the real timeline to Hartwell's board of directors and their major clients. But before I hit schedule, something in my inbox caught my eye, a new message from Amelia. Subject, "You don't understand what's happening." Her email wasn't defensive, it was terrified. "Jake, I never meant to screw you over. Mark made me do it. He said if I didn't cooperate, he'd ruin me. You're not the only one he's using. Please don't do anything yet. There's something you need to know." I almost deleted it, thinking it was just damage control. But then I saw the last line. "He's planning something that involves your code and your name." And that's when I realized my revenge might not just expose him. It might expose something way bigger than I ever imagined. I read Amelia's email 3 times, each word sinking like a stone. "He's planning something that involves your code and your name." At first, I thought she was bluffing, trying to guilt me or stall for time before my email to the board went out. But something about her tone, tight, frantic, desperate, didn't sound fake. I finally replied, "What are you talking about? Be specific." 5 minutes later, she responded with a single line, "Mark's using your code for a defense contract." I froze. A defense contract? At Hartwell Industries? That didn't even make sense. We made industrial automation tools, not weapons tech. I called her immediately. This time, she answered. Her voice was shaking. "Jake, I can't talk long, he's in meetings. But listen, after you left, Mark started negotiating with a contractor called Dynatrol Systems. They handle logistics for the military. He's pitching your automation framework as a proprietary military logistics algorithm. He's claiming it's his IP." My brain couldn't even keep up. "That's illegal," I said. "That's federal-level fraud." "I know," she whispered. "But he's rewriting all the documentation to show it was developed under his direction. He made me sign off as a witness. He said if I didn't, he'd tell the board I was complicit in your so-called sabotage." My stomach twisted. Everything suddenly connected. That's why Mark had been so desperate to frame me. If I was disgraced, he could safely sell my code as his own without risk of me challenging the IP. He wasn't trying to destroy my career just for ego. He was laundering ownership of my creation. I opened my email drafts and stared at the scheduled message to the board. My plan had been to humiliate him, maybe cost him his position. But now, if he was tied to a federal contract, exposing this publicly could trigger criminal investigations, real ones. If I handled it wrong, I could get caught in the crossfire too. Amelia sent another message. "There's more. He's rewriting the code you built, but he doesn't understand it. He's changing key parameters to make it look different. If Dynatrol runs it as is, it could cause real failures in the field, supply chain systems, fleet routing, everything." So not only had he stolen my work, he was about to weaponize it under my name, in a contract that could collapse if my flawed clone code malfunctioned. That's when the real fear set in. If something went wrong, my digital signature was still embedded deep in the framework. My name, my code ID, my original encryption hash, it was all still inside. Meaning if the system failed, I would be the one blamed. I sat there in the dark, lit only by the glow of my monitor, my cursor blinking over that scheduled email to the board. My finger hovered over the cancel send button. Amelia was still whispering on the line. "Jake, if this goes public before he finishes transferring the rights, he'll bury us both. But if you give me a little time, I can get the actual contract files. You'll have proof he's selling your work as his own." I didn't trust her fully, not after what she did, but I trusted desperation. And she sounded like a woman cornered, so I canceled the email, for now. Instead, I told her, "You have 24 hours. After that, I blow everything up." She promised she'd send me the files by morning. But when the morning came, I didn't get an email. I got a call from an unknown number. And the voice on the other end wasn't Amelia. It was Mark, calm, controlled, almost amused. "Jake," he said, "we both know you've been digging. I suggest you stop. Amelia won't be sending you anything. She's been reassigned." Then he laughed, the same laugh from that conference room, and hung up. I just sat there with the phone in my hand, numb. Reassigned. That word echoed in my head. Mark didn't mean she got transferred. He meant he'd gotten rid of her. Maybe fired, maybe worse. Within an hour, Rachel texted me again. "Amelia's gone. Security escorted her out this morning." Mark said she violated data compliance policy. Everyone's terrified. That confirmed it. She'd tried to help, and he'd shut her down fast. For the rest of that day, I couldn't focus on anything. I scrolled through news feeds, Hartwell's press releases, LinkedIn posts, until one headline made my heart stop. Hartwell Industries awarded $48 million defense logistics contract with Dynatrol Systems. There it was. Mark standing in front of the American flag, shaking hands with a defense executive, flashing that smug, camera-ready smile. The caption beneath the photo read, "CEO Mark Hartwell credits innovative automation algorithms developed under his leadership for securing the contract." My code. My system. My name stripped away. But what really hit me wasn't the lie, it was the timing. The article mentioned the system was already being deployed in test environments. Meaning, my framework, rewritten, mangled, unstable, was already running critical logistics simulations tied to military supply operations. If it failed, and it would, because he didn't understand it, it could misroute inventory, freeze procurement chains, or corrupt data for hundreds of suppliers. That wasn't just corporate fraud anymore. That was national-level fraud. I called a friend from my old tech circle, someone who used to work on government contracts. I told him the short version, no names, just a company reusing stolen automation code for a defense deal. He immediately said, "That's criminal. The penalties for misrepresenting software origin on a federal contract are insane. Someone's going to prison if that comes out." That's when I understood why Mark had done all of this, why he humiliated me, stole my code, and set me up as a saboteur. He hadn't done it because he hated me. He'd done it because he needed me erased. He knew his rewritten version of my framework couldn't function without my original algorithms. He couldn't legally sell it as his own unless the original author, me, was discredited, blacklisted, or facing legal trouble. He'd planned it from the start. That's why he'd laughed when I asked for a raise. That's why he'd made me present to the board, to strip my name from the project in front of witnesses. That's why Amelia was coerced into helping him, and why she got thrown away the moment she grew a conscience. He wasn't just greedy, he was strategic, ruthless. The kind of man who saw people as tools, use, discard, replace. And now, he was about to make millions off the back of the very system he stole from me, under a government deal that could get soldiers killed if it went wrong. I realized then this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about stopping something that should never have existed in the first place. So that night, I opened my secure folder again. I didn't delete my evidence this time. I expanded it, because if Mark thought I was done fighting, he was about to find out what happens when a man with nothing left decides to burn everything he built, on his own terms. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up at my desk with every window dark except the one glowing on my monitor, a terminal screen waiting for a single command. This time, I wasn't acting out of anger. I was precise, methodical, surgical. If Mark wanted to use my code to commit federal fraud, fine. But he wasn't going to do it in the dark. I was going to drag him and his shiny little empire into the light. First, I compiled every piece of digital evidence into a secure archive, commit logs, internal chat screenshots, the altered documentation Amelia had sent me before she disappeared. I attached my own GitHub timestamps, dated months before Hartwell's supposed innovation. The proof was airtight. Then I reached out to my friend from the Business Journal again. I told him I had something that could end a CEO's career and maybe start a federal investigation. He didn't hesitate. "Bring it." I didn't send it through email this time. I met him in person, quiet cafe, corner booth, no cell phones on the table. I handed him a USB drive and said, "If anything happens to me, this story still runs." He nodded like he'd done this before. Next, I went straight to Dynatrol Systems, found their procurement compliance contact, and sent a certified report outlining exactly how the code they'd just bought was stolen intellectual property, complete with side-by-side technical comparisons. No accusations, just facts. Cold, verifiable, time-stamped facts. Then came the last step. I went public. I uploaded a statement on Medium, not bitter, not emotional, just the truth. I built an automation framework that doubled Hartwell Industries' revenue. After being denied compensation, I resigned. The company later accused me of sabotage and repackaged my work under new ownership to secure a government contract. I am releasing full documentation proving my authorship. I attached the files, logs, and digital signatures. Within 6 hours, it blew up. Reddit, Hacker News, Tech Twitter, journalists DMing me for quotes. By noon, the story hit TechCrunch, then Forbes, then the Columbus Dispatch. Hartwell's board panicked. Dynatrol froze their contract within 24 hours pending IP review. By the end of that week, the Department of Justice had opened a formal investigation into procurement fraud. Hartwell Industries' stock nosedived, their website went offline, and Mark Hartwell was temporarily suspended pending inquiry. Amelia emailed me again a few days later, short and shaky. "He's gone, Jake. They fired him." I told them everything. "Thank you for not letting him win." I didn't reply, not because I hated her anymore, just because I didn't need to. A month later, I started consulting freelance. The open-source version of my framework took off. Companies wanted to use it legitimately this time. I never made millions, but I made enough and I slept well. Mark's name eventually disappeared from the news cycle, buried under other scandals. But sometimes, when I check my spam folder, I still see old Hartwell addresses trying to reach me. Probably desperate cleanup crews or lawyers digging through what's left. I don't open them, because every answer they'll ever need is already sitting right where I left it, in that folder on their dead server, the one no one could ever crack. Too late, and damn, was it ever.